Film Society and wrote a monthly column for 8 years in the Indian magazine The Week. Manto, Nandita's second directorial film, premiered in 2018 at the Cannes Film Festival and traveled to many other festivals around the world. Manto can be watched on Netflix. Heyman, if you have the trailer ready, could you play? Heyman?
अपनी कहानी को कहना समझता हूँ जिसमें समाज देख सके। अगर आप इन अफसानों को बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकते तो इसका मतलब ये है कि ज़माना ही नाकाबिल बर्दाश्त।
It's okay, maybe you can show it at the end.
Heyman, if it's not ready, we'll do it at the end. No problem.
आपके अफसानों में औरतों के लिए हमेशा एक खास हमदर्दी होती है।
हर औरत के लिए नहीं, कुछ तो उसके लिए जो खुद को बेच तो नहीं रही लेकिन लोग उसे धीरे धीरे खरीदते जा रहे हैं, और कुछ उसके लिए जो रात को जागती है और दिन को सोते में डरावना ख्वाब देख के उठ जाती है कि बुढ़ापा उसके दरवाजे पर दस्तक दे रहा है।
विश्वास नहीं हो रहा कि हमारा मुल्क आजाद है।
तुम एक आजाद हिंदुस्तान में पैदा हो गए। जब गुलाम थे तो आजादी का ख्वाब देखते थे, और अब आजाद हैं तो कौन सा ख्वाब देखें? तुम बेफिक्र हो, मैं इतने लिखूंगा कि तुम भूखे नहीं मरोगे।
यही तो फिक्र है कि आपके लिखने की वजह से ही हम भूखे मरेंगे।
मंटो साहब, आपकी कहानी ठंडा गोश्त पर फांसी का केस है।
ये मंटो साहब का एक शाहकार अफसाना है। अगर एक तरफ आप लिखने की आजादी चाहते हैं,
I think we are getting a message saying that it's not clear. But anyway, you can just put it on a chat, the link, Anish, instead of showing it, because they can always see it properly, better quality once the program finishes. Yeah, just use this time to converse in our lockdown spaces. We are all connected through this cyberspace. Suddenly we realize the importance of it, I think, even more. So yeah, let's begin the conversation.
So over to you, please.
Well, there is no specific thing. I think it's a very broad subject that you've given me on, cinema and society, because it's always, we think it's a chicken and egg situation. Sometimes people say, oh, well, what we show in cinema is what the society becomes. Or some people say, no, it's society first, and that's what impacts cinema. And I think they are very deeply linked. The people who are making these films, all of us, we come from that same society. So obviously, in this chicken and egg, I think the first one is the society that impacts the cinema. If you see in every era, in different parts of the country, big events, they will impact the kind of narratives, the kind of stories we choose, and how we choose to tell them. So, and in return, of course, cinema also impacts society because it's such a powerful medium. It tells you stories. We are all somewhere voyeuristic, somewhere we are itching to also know other people's stories. Cinema is also a mirror. As Manto would have also said, वो कहते थे कि मेरे अफसाने एक आईना है. अगर किसी बुरी सूरत वाले को अपनी शक्ल से ही, if that, I don't know, I'm assuming all of you understand Hindi, but if somebody doesn't like what they see in the mirror, it's because it's time that they reflect about themselves. So in many ways, cinema is also the mirror. And I think that's the relationship that cinema and society have, which is very deep. And especially in a country which is the largest producer of cinema, we make close to 2,000 films a year. How many actually see the light of day is a different matter. But Hindi cinema is not the only cinema. I know we often think Bollywood is what is cinema. There are not just the independent and mainstream, but also various languages. And that's something the platforms have made it easier for us to watch. Now it is much easier to watch a Bengali or a Tamil or a Malayalam or a Kannada or a Marathi film anywhere in the country, anywhere in the world, because now we can watch it with subtitles. many of the film lovers, I remember, I mean, even in my college days and thereafter, it was easier for us to watch a Godard or a Truffaut, like French Nouvelle Vague, French cinema, or a German or a Russian or an American film than to watch films that are being made in our own country. So some of the earlier masters, it's a real pity that a lot of the young students probably haven't even seen, films of Aravindan and Adur Gopalakrishnan and Ritvik Ghatak and Satyajit Ray and Mrinal Sen and so many of those films, Girish Kasaravalli and the independent cinema movement of the 80s or the late 70s, 80s, early 90s. Those films hopefully are going to be now revived and restored. Some of the films are now being restored. For instance, I worked in Mrinal Sen's last film called Amar Bhuvan, and nobody can even find a print of that to be able to make it into an high quality HD. There's a DVD available, but he was really last of the masters, and it's so sad that we can't see his film. So I think cinema has reflected its form and its content based on what's going on in society. Today, we are going through this huge crisis. I think this kind of a crisis comes in once in 100 years. And going forward, we don't know whether it's going to be 100 or 200, where, nature teaches us a lesson because we don't learn it. We only learn it the hard way. And we are in this lockdown. It's going to have huge impact going forward. A huge health crisis, of course, as we know, but also a very big economic crisis that is going to impact everyone. We all say it's a leveler, that the coronavirus is agnostic, and it's true. The rich and the poor, and across caste, religion, gender, it can get anybody. But the point is that the poor, the marginalized, the daily wagers, the migrant laborers are far more vulnerable than any of us, because they have a double whammy. They are really caught between the virus and starvation. And the reason I'm talking about it in this context as well is that we don't see the common people's story that many. We don't know. Suddenly people are waking up and saying, really? Millions of construction laborers came from different parts of the country. They are going back. We're just screaming at them. People are beating them, spraying them with pesticides. The police is harassing them, saying that, this is a lockdown. Why aren't you just staying put where you are? How are they to stay put? They live on streets. They live in, slums. They have to give their rent in those little places where they sleep in the city. So they have to go back. And suddenly we are waking up and saying, my God, I didn't realize that the situation was so bad. And we will need them for our own comforts, for our own houses to be built, for our own work to be done, for the carpenter that we need and the plumber that we need. So, for our convenience, we will want them back. So I think this is also a time to look at our selfishness and how we have kind of ignored them for so long. And so has our cinema. And sometimes I feel like maybe in their rebelliousness, people should not come back. We should in any case create more job opportunities in rural areas so that they can find their living there, they can live with their families, they can have a quality of life and not live in these terrible conditions where the poor lives in the city. And imagine a world if they didn't come back, if they chose to sort of rebel against it and say, this is how you treated us, now we're not coming back. And our cinema has done the same. I mean, earlier, the protagonist was a rickshaw puller or a mill worker or a construction laborer. We still saw many more films, with common people, with the man on the street and the woman on the street, with the marginalized community, who were kind of seeing, they were showing their lives. We could see their lives. But today what has happened, they have completely vanished. Our rural pages have vanished from our newspapers. They have been replaced more and more by finance and politics and Bollywood. Our cinema has changed. Our heroes dine in Cape Town and dance in New Zealand. I know not all, but many have. We've kind of forgotten them. And I think that really is the tragedy, because when it goes out of our pop culture, it goes out of our, the visual influences that we have all around us, they also go out of our memory. We only see them for our conveniences, and we don't understand the deep interdependence that we have with them, which the coronavirus is reminding us of. So I think it's also time for us to see what kind of films will come out. I mean, I'm really curious to see what kind of films are we going to make after this crisis. How is this crisis going to impact it? Is it only going to be about social distancing and about the privileges that you and I enjoy? The fact we have a laptop or a phone that we can even do this conversation, the fact that I'm speaking in English and you're understanding it in English itself is such a divider. So I'm really curious to see how our cinema is going to be different. How is it going to reflect the realities that we have forgotten? It's definitely impacting my work, the next film that I'm working on. This is a good time to write. And I think it's very different. Although when I finished Manto and I thought, okay, I'm going to do something different. It's not going to be about the miseries of the world. Maybe I'm going to do a nice, small, simple love story or something. But I guess I'm just so deeply impacted by everything that happens around that you can't sort of lock it. You can't pretend it doesn't exist and park it and say, okay, let me, and that is where my mind and heart is right now. And I'm working on a script that deals with some of the issues. And it's not only about the marginalized people, it is about our apathy towards it. Both are kind of linked together. Our politics is linked with it. Our social structures linked. The racism that we have come to normalize is linked with it. So all of this, I think, forms that's the sort of fabric of our society. And I think it's very important that our cinema reflects it. I think for it to become a conversation, I would be happier if I could start taking questions, and then, of course, I will continue with the answers. You may disagree with something, you may have something to add. This conversation will only be fruitful if we are totally open and candid and, just share our thoughts and ask questions freely. Over to you guys now.
Okay. You said quite a lot in such a short span of time. But
I just wanted to lay the sort of the space, what sort of interests me, and I'm hoping interests you. And let's take it from here. And I'm sure there are questions. I'm going to wear my glasses so I can see you all more clearly.
Okay. If you could just give me 30 seconds. There is some noise coming from somewhere. Just want to sort that out before going ahead.
Yeah, I'm hearing it a lot. I thought maybe it's only me that is hearing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of distance. Yeah. Hemant, whoever is Hemant, he needs to mute his...
Yeah.
Now it's much better. Thank you, Harsh, for doing that.
No, Hemant is actually doing the parallel stream on YouTube as well. So I think there was some
he can mute it,
glitch.
maybe?
Yeah.
He can mute his own thing and then still do what he has to do. So it doesn't disturb us. We're supposed to be a tech country and we constantly have tech problems. I don't know why. Where are these tech people?
I agree with you. This is a little bit on me this time. I'm sorry.
No. It's not you. Just that even when I go for programs, the mic isn't working, some slideshow's not working. It's just, I think, human follies. No problem. Now we are set.
Ready, or should I bite? If anyone was listening, and I look to Facebook too, I'm sure people must have started getting inquisitive. But I'll start. So one thing that you had mentioned, that in fact I think before we started the session itself, that how can we use this time productively in choosing the kind of cinema we want to watch, especially in these lockdown times, because I've seen it with myself and friends as well, where watching something serious right now, apart from like with everything going on, seems to be difficult for people. At least that's what we seem to think, and that's what people tell me. because we want to watch some kind of comedies or some kind of maybe rom-coms and the occasional maybe serious movie in between. So what would you have to say on that?
But that is the attitude we have had for the longest time. And this whole term called the escapist cinema, because we think of cinema as a form of entertainment. I personally see it as a form of engagement, something that engages you, something that that you are interested in. If you are grabbed by what is being seen, whether you're going to laugh or you're going to cry or you're going to just watch or you're going to be uncomfortable or you're going to become fearful, it's all of that. I mean, even horror cinema is, I guess that's a kind of entertainment, but it's again because it's engaging. So I prefer to first of all use the term that cinema is an engaging medium and not just for entertainment. And also entertainment, the definition could vary, because what is entertaining for you may not be entertaining for me. What is funny for you may not be funny for me, because cinema is subjective. Any form of art is subjective. When I tell a story, if I'm doing a manto or a firak, that's my view, it's my manto. Of course, for that, it is he's a historical figure. I would have done a fair amount of research, which I did, and I try to be as true and authentic and historically accurate as I can be. Having said that, what I choose to tell, what I don't, how I'm creating the other characters, how I create the era is all really my interpretation. So, it is going to be subjective. So for me, I think to be in touch with what is happening, to see films that tell you also about the reality, films that have a sense of foreboding as to the kind of world we are getting into. Like, for instance, Black Mirror. Many of you might have seen the series. It is, it's serious. It's about the kind of how technology is going to become maybe in the future. It's imaginative, and yet it's very engaging because it kind of makes you scared that is this how we are going to let technology rule us and interfere with our human aspect of life. So I think it really varies. I would say use this time to expand and just have different experiences. That in any case is a good thing that one should do in life. That's how you even know what you like or you don't like. If you keep eating the same food, obviously you're going to choose the dishes from that what you like. But if you try 10 different kinds of things, I know it's a privilege, but if you are privileged, then you might as well use it. So if there is different kind of cinema available to you through different platforms, through YouTube, try them out, see what they are like. Maybe you will like something in that. I remember that when I went to Rishi Valley to teach, which was many years ago, I taught there for a term. It's in the south, a wonderful boarding school where my brother was studying. And that's when I really got exposed to much more Carnatic music. Living in Delhi, my parents had really introduced to me a lot of Hindustani music. And initially, I wasn't warming up to Carnatic music because it's a bit different. But after I got exposed to it, I started really liking it. And, later on, and then I didn't hear it for many years. And later on, I again started listening to it. So sometimes it's just a matter of being a little more adventurous, allowing yourself different exposure and telling yourself that, yes, maybe I like it. So I think watch different language films. Now they are all available with subtitles. Our own country, there are also interesting films from South Asia. Now there are interesting films coming out of Bangladesh and Nepal and Pakistan and Sri Lanka. They expand to Southeast Asia. There are amazing films coming out of Korea and Taiwan and, China. And not just when I say outside, we don't mean only American films, but there's a whole wide world out there. So yeah, look at what interesting people are recommending. If you want, at the end of it, I can recommend a list of 10 films and put it on, see an Iraqi film. I remember just on top of my head something called Turtles Can Fly. You could watch that. And you can watch an old film called Cinema Paradiso, which is a very nice, simple film, to see, or Almodovar's Talk to Her. So there are various films that we could see, or Adur Gopal Krishnan's Mousetrap. I don't know if it's available. The sad part is a lot of our great films are not available. Or Rituparna Ghosh's films, his earlier films. So there is a lot out there. Don't be lazy. Go out there and Google and find out. I can see Harsh Narayan is one of the people who's online. He has been doing a lot of work in South Asian cinema, and maybe he can recommend. He's been wanting to do a South Asian film festival for a long time, and I've been supporting it. So Harsh, now it's your job to also recommend 10 films that you think that can come out of our South Asian region to expose our audiences to that. Yes, Anish. Anybody else who has a question?
Do that. So there are some questions.
Why don't we write the questions, because then it takes too much load on the video. If we can write the questions, and Anish, you can read them out, the ones you think could be, or even a comment, it just might take away some of the load.
Definitely. So that's what some people have done. So there's come across that can cinema play an important role in influencing the government to stress on rural livelihood policies, motivating the population to pursue livelihoods in the village?
Right. So in cinema, if we can take up two broad categories, there is a documentary cinema and there is fiction cinema. If the fiction cinema becomes too didactic and preachy, then it doesn't work, because it's not only important what story you tell, but how you tell it. It's very important that it's engaging, that it gives you a sense of characters and what are their conflicts, what are their moral dilemmas, how are they reflecting the reality. So fiction cinema needs to be more, I don't know what the word is, but definitely not didactic, not in your face, not preachy, not high-handed. That becomes boring. But documentaries can take up some of these things as well. And documentaries today are not those older films division films that we used to see and we got bored and we thought, oh God, they are interesting subject, but they're very boringly told. Today, cinema, documentary space is very exciting. It's telling you films almost with a cinematic approach. It's telling you a story about something that's very real. And the question you raised as to how do we engage, how do we influence the government? We as people can influence the government through our cinema, through our writings, through our social media, because some of the big decisions have to be taken by the government. So I think definitely cinema has raised those questions. I mean, I can tell you that my first film as an actor, Fire, most cinema, it's difficult to really quantify the impact because it's a very qualitative impact. Cinema influences very gradually. It tells you, it sort of triggers thoughts, it challenges prejudices, it informs you, it creates empathy. But these things you can't measure. But I can tell you that I want to believe that Fire had a little role to play in actually changing the law, 377, when it got decriminalized, an archaic law, when it was repealed by the Supreme Court, and we said, yes, homosexuality should not be a criminal offense, which is totally bizarre in today's day and age, in any day and age, but definitely not today. And I think Fire did trigger those conversations. It brought the subject of, gay and lesbian rights and LGBTQ rights into the fore. People started talking about it. People started realizing that, yes, there is more, how are we stopping people from loving each other? I mean, what kind of a world it is where we are okay with lynching and not with loving? So I think cinema can influence in a deep way, but then we need audiences watching it. If you don't watch it, those kind of films are just going to go by the sidelines. So as audiences, I must make the effort to watch the kind of cinema that pushes the boundaries. If you're not going to watch those films, then they'll win some award, they'll be talked about in the press, but then the people won't really watch them. So I think we have to also see what is our responsibility. What's the next question?
The next question, we can take one from Advair. The new generations are getting drawn more and more towards international cinema. They're finding lesser and lesser options in Bollywood. This audience, to a certain extent, is being held by the new Indian web series coming up nowadays. Where do you think Bollywood is lacking?
Give me 1 second.
Okay, just to take that time, because we have about 50 plus participants here, the video quality is...
But I think I answered also. Maybe some of you can switch off your video. That will lower the pressure on it. If you can just keep it audio. Because I remember last time when I done one.
Yeah, sorry, very sorry to interrupt, but
No.
just another option is that you could switch to the YouTube link. Also doing a live stream that would help us a bit. If you could just, and we are still taking in questions from the comment section in YouTube as well. So if some of you could do that, that would help. But back to the
I think
question.
I answered to some extent that question of why are people watching foreign films. Suddenly in India, with all these platforms, we've become a global village. We are exposed to foreign films. A country that's been colonized for 200 years is always, of course, more fascinated by what's coming from outside. And nothing wrong with that at all. I'm not a purist at all. I believe that we should take the best from wherever it comes. But it's also good to know about your own context, because finally we operate in our context, and we need to know what are the stories of people living in this country. And this country already is like a continent. I mean, what are, from Nagaland and Kerala and Kashmir and Gujarat, it's as varied as all of Europe can be. So I think this is a good time to see that. Bollywood, let's not even call it that because it kind of narrows it, but any mainstream cinema, by its very definition, is trying to please a whole lot of people. When you're trying to please many people, when you're trying to kind of keep everyone happy, because it's kind of driven by the box office, what happens is that you kind of have to sometimes let go of the nuances, because then you feel, will people understand this? Will some audience be against it? Is this too opinionated? Am I taking a stand about something? If I have to keep everybody happy, I need to have a very mean, like an average, like a median ways. I need to do tried and tested things. Obviously, that's not going to be so adventurous. And when you do a kind of a thing that is going to please a lot of people, you're going to be less and less specific. You're going to deal with very generic things that is going to appeal to a lot of people. But I believe the more local you are, the more universal you are. You can see a story about somebody very particular, and yet, because the human emotions are universal, you will be able to connect with that person's fear, or that person's dilemma, or that person's prejudice, or that person's longing. You will be able to relate. And also, when you see a film and how you react tells you a lot about your own self. When people come and tell me what they didn't like about my films, I feel they are telling me more about themselves than the film, because the film is what it is, with all its good, bad and ugly aspects. And I know some of the bad and ugly aspects as much because I've lived with it. And when I see it now, I don't see it after having seen it 1,000 times, and after the main screening at Cannes, I don't think I've seen it again, because I'll only see faults with it. But when people react and tell me little things that they really connected with, that resonated with them, that they disliked or liked, they're actually revealing more and more about themselves. So I think watching a film will tell you a lot about your own self and your changing self. We are not the same. My deep passions and concerns remain the same in 20 years. And yet I know I'm not the same person. And the reason I know it is because my responses to things have changed. And I think one way of knowing that is the kind of films that I anchor towards, what I like and what I don't like in them.
So, thank you. So the next question we take is Sahitya is asking, platforms like Netflix are bringing out good material nowadays. Do you feel this is a good platform for cinema in India to reach the younger generation?
Yes, it is a good platform, and not just Netflix. There are other platforms now. There is Hotstar, there is Amazon, there's Apple TV, and YouTube itself. I mean, a lot of people can't afford to take their films to these platforms. Also, these platforms are still comparatively a privilege because there are many who cannot reach these platforms. Some of them are more expensive than the others, but we are a large country. In terms of absolute numbers, we still have a lot of people can, and those of you who can access it should definitely use it. Anish, the noise has come back, so I don't know if you are hearing it. There's a lot of disturbance. There's an echo. Maybe your thing is on. Maybe you can mute when I. Okay, thank you. So I think definitely it offers you, but these platforms also have tons of things. It's also a clutter of many things, which is good and bad. It's good because it makes it democratic. There's so much available for us. But then it depends on your discerning quality, your wisdom to see what of that are you going to anchor towards, So read about it. There is tons. You can read reviews. What reviews do you read? Are you reading New York Times or a Scroll or a Wire or, News Laundry? Depends on you are also what you read. Are you reading those or are you reading something that I don't want to name the ones that I don't like too much, but so what you're going to find out, what you read, what you watch, the company you keep, all of that is going to impact how you think. All of that is going to define you. So I think this is a time to do some deep reflection as to what are we really watching, and is that going to define me? So let's all expand our worldview. We've got this time.
So, Gia has said that Dark and Beautiful is an amazing initiative, ma'am. It has given a great confidence to girls like me who have heard comments regarding the color many times. Are you planning to direct a movie on this topic?
This is a very, very important topic. To be honest, this was not one of the issues that I started off when I was engaging in social issues. But issues of discrimination has always been of interest to me. It deeply bothers me that we create these walls between us and that we label people. We create the other. So definitely this is one of them. But I never thought this would be a standalone issue till this organization called Women of Worth. They came to me in 2013 and asked me to, support it. I thought it was like one of the other issues that you support and you kind of don't really put your heart and soul into it, but you care about it. What I mean, a heart and soul in the sense that doesn't become one of the things that you pursue and give enough time to. But I was surprised how quickly it went viral, and so many, especially young women, related to it. And while I was aware of the issue, maybe I didn't realize the intensity of it because my parents at least didn't put that complex in my mind. Because I never wanted to be an actor, I didn't sort of suffer too much of those issues. I didn't go around asking people to give me work, so I didn't have to go through that. But of course, in films, and if you're a dark person, you deal with it constantly. There is no escape. For instance, when I used to do films, more of as an actor, if I did a film where I had to play an educated upper middle class character, they would say, at least for this character, could you lighten your skin? So it's okay if you're doing a lower caste, lower class, a slum dweller or a village woman, then it was fine. But the minute you had to do educated and an affluent person, they would ask me, and I said, there are many people, it's wrong casting, but there are many of us who are educated and, come from a middle class or an upper middle class, and we are dark. Why do you want to stereotype? So slowly it became more of a passion and a cause that I really wanted to, spend more time and energy with. And last year, it was 10 years of the campaign, so they asked me to do something, and I thought Dark is Beautiful. I was a little uncomfortable with the title because it again puts that pressure that, we are dark, one category of people. It labels you, and also women have too much of pressure of looking beautiful. It's too much of a burden. We are much more. We have many other things and interests and talents, and so that I wanted to get away from those words, and that's why I called it India's Got Color, which also is not only limited to skin color, though the campaign was, and if you get time, please watch it. There's a YouTube link of India's Got Color where many actors like Radhika Apte, Swara Bhaskar, Ratna Pathak, Kamaljeet, Vikrant Messi, many people kind of joined hands and supported this campaign. And the idea was to just be able to celebrate diversity of all kinds. So thank you. If you like the campaign, let's spread more understanding that there is a lot more to all of us than to be defining us by our skin color.
There's another question which I personally think is very, very pertinent, even though we have been talking around this theme. So, Clara Malik on Facebook is saying that most of the Indian commercial movies of Bollywood are basically based on so-called higher caste stories. Why very few movies like Masan, Article 15 cover a daily perspective, as already Dalit perspective is seen very times in any media platform. So when will Indian movie on this aspect? So
you're absolutely right. That is something that deeply has been bothering me as well. But if you see, there is a natural exclusion that has happened. There's a huge historical wrong that has happened for years, for decades and centuries, where the lower caste people, because we are such a casteist society, there is a whole caste. There's a whole caste and class also, unfortunately, also overlap completely. So they've just been out of the schools that we privileged people go to. They're not in our colleges. They're not in our jobs. So how are they to tell those stories? To be able to reach a place where you can make a film requires certain things to be able to even enter that space. So there has been a complete natural exclusion, and it's fairly recent that people are still now making films, because otherwise, as an upper caste person, when you make a film, not that I don't believe that only if you are from that particular community or group that you can tell the stories. Others can also, for instance, I can tell a story of a suffering of another person, in the sense that is what is all about empathy. Men have told some amazing stories also about women. Some of the great stories of women empowerment or the struggles of women actually have been also told by men, but that's because mostly men were controlling the narrative. So while some of the feminist films that I have grown up with have been told, let's say in our own country, by Satyajit Ray or Ritwik Ghatak or Shyam Benegal, or various of these actors, or Rituparna Ghosh, etc., they are very important. But it's also important that women tell their own stories, that our own gaze, the female gaze, also comes out. So when I'm asked, why did you choose a male protagonist? Why not? I mean, how I choose to show a male protagonist or a female protagonist, women need to control that narrative too, because we want diversity. So similarly, while yes, upper caste can also tell stories of lower caste, as it's been done in Article 15, but it's very important that people tell their own stories. And that's why for me, Fandry has been one of the most powerful stories told by Nagaraj Manjule. And if you haven't seen it, please do watch it. And it just experiences from your own, the stories that you've actually heard growing up, has a totally different impact. Pa Ranjit from the South has been now telling stories from the community. He's encouraging people from the Dalit community to tell their stories. So slowly that movement is catching up, like Masan, like Neeraj Gehwan has told. If you haven't seen it, please do watch it. And it's important that we watch these films, because otherwise we are all complicit in leaving out these stories. As audiences too, we are complicit. So I think the thing will change only when more people from the Dalit community come and have that space to make these films. Then their stories will come out. So it is at the moment extremely skewed, and we can play our little part in changing that.
Thank you. So another question that's been asked here, which but it's about Iranian filmmaker like Abbas Kiarostami has been charged of sedition in his career. Do you think film as an art or any art can be seditious, and how it will especially in these times when one filmmaker and his art is being charged of sedition? And just to add to that, there's a question along maybe similar lines where you can take them both together. With so many web platforms coming up, there's no control of censor board, or the board doesn't work on these platforms. What is your view on this? So the idea of control around and where that goes?
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's a very important question and a very important thing that we all need to think about and discuss. I personally am a big champion of freedom of expression. I don't think we need to fear freedom. Of course, when there is freedom, all kinds of things will come, like they are on the internet, right? At the moment, like you rightly said, that there is no censorship. And yet, we become more and more discerning. We start, some of us are going to look for the good things because the good also exists. And I personally feel the only judge of any form of art is only time. The rest of it is all subjective. So it's only time that is going to tell you what is going to last. In every era, if Kabir today is still relevant, or if Michelangelo is still relevant, it's because, it's great work. It is going to stand the test of time. So we don't need to worry. The rubbish is going to get sieved out when we sort of look back at it. So therefore, I think, firstly, coming back to your first question, sedition is a very archaic law. And, when a handful of people decide what is anti-national, like this is one of the galis that many of us liberals get very liberally, is, in fact, if you love your country, which we do, then you are going to see all its good and bad. And again, sort of drawing it and inspired by Manto, he wants to show all. He doesn't believe in showing beauty. He feels that reality has to be shown with all its warts and blemishes. So even in my representation of him, if you see the film, it's not that I've put him on a pedestal, even though I absolutely adore him and love him and respect him and admire him. His warts and blemishes are also seen. If today you ask me to tell, 10 things about me, if I only say the good things, am I being honest? Not at all. Because I have good and bad and everything in between. So I am going to share also, if I'm true to myself, I have to share that. So if you love your country, you have to show what is not right with your country, because only then will you change it. If you put a band-aid and hide it, or if you say, oh, but outsiders will know this about India, then we are just being pretentious. We are actually not healing that wound. We are in fact making it worse because it's going to just infest. And I have personally suffered that censorship when we were going to do water. And Shabana Azmi and I shaved our head for it. And, I was there for 15 days, actually seeing the plight of the widows in Banaras. They were shocking stories. Even though I'd been engaged on gender issues for so long, and I knew many of these things, seeing it there, to seeing these dungeon-like places where these women with their shaved head would stay with a little window that would look at where you could see the river from, and they would have to beg during the day, have maybe 1 or 2 meals a day. Some of them had to indulge in sex work just to be able to survive, and the pathetic situation that was there. And some of these right-wing small outfits didn't want us to make the film because they felt that this was going to show India in poor light. So I think it is important that we see the good and the bad, and show as things as they are. And I think you'll always feel the intent of a filmmaker. I don't know how it's visible, even though it's a flat screen and it's not a theater where there is that clear vibe. Yet you will always know whether the intention of a filmmaker is to sensationalize or to titillate or to just denigrate for the sake of it, or is it to bring out the reality and to actually, it is coming out of a deeper concern. So I think we can definitely not leave that judgment in the hands of 5 or 6 people to decide for a 1.3 billion country. So I think censorship is not the way we have to go. And in any case, it's a farce. If everything is available on the internet, and which is available on our smartphones, what are we censoring? And what might be right for you may not be right for me. For me, what gets a U certificate, which has very regressive dialogues, which is very demeaning and very superficial, might be something that I would not want to show. So I think it's because it's so subjective. I would say to gag filmmakers or artists or writers in the name of that it's seditious, or in the name of censoring, is definitely not something that I would endorse.
So there's another question here which talks about what is emotion? Is it right to kindle intellect with rhetoric dialogues, or is it better to make silence to speak. And just to my mind, that also makes me remember movies which do not have dialogue. Or like before we had that the technology to show dialogue, there were such evoking movies. Like maybe our generation isn't receptive to it anymore, but silence can definitely evoke. So what plays
Definitely.
have today in cinema, perhaps?
But I think in cinema also it's not just the dialogue. Even in a talkie film, the moments of silence where there are people emoting or things happening or actions that are played out, they tell you as much of a story. It's not only the dialogue. In fact, see Chaplin is like an such an amazing filmmaker. I don't think there's been another Chaplin. And when I say that, doesn't mean that only the way he walked and he talked and he did, but that kind of sensitivity where he brought out stories of common people in a funny way, and at the same time, so there was so much satire and there was so much social commentary in it that it was incredible. In fact, when Talkie started, he still made a silent film after that. And I'm forgetting, the name is slipping my mind. I don't know if it was City Lights, or if somebody knows, please put it on the chat. But it was just incredible that he still believed in that. Now, sometimes we do a silent film like The Artist, which was an interesting film. It was a black and white film that came out just a couple of years ago, which again they had obviously all the technology that they had because it was just a couple of years old, and yet they chose to do a silent film. It's nice as an experiment. But today, we do converse. What we say, the words we hear, the words like, for instance, now, it has a certain strength. So I don't think it's an either or. It is about how to judiciously use words and how to judiciously use silence. And I think it's the combination of the two that creates cinema. Cinema is a composite art, and that's why there is painting because of the art direction. It's a visual medium, so color palettes, all of that. There is sound, there is music. All of that kind of together creates the story that we want to tell through this medium. So I think we don't need to choose one or the other. Whatever, I think, for me at least, I would say the content, determines the form. So even when I'm writing a scene, do these characters need to say, or do they do not need to say? And both are equally important. But it's the content for me that decides the form. I don't think, okay, this is going to be my form and now let me fit in the content, which also works. Sometimes the form becomes bigger than the contents. But for me, at least, it's the content that drives the form.
Thank you for that. There are a lot of volunteers here who want to also know about your journey with SPICMACAY, and
Yes.
ask for some advice for SPICMACAY and what role you see for SPICMACAY playing in the future. If you could tell us.
Yeah, sure. Well, I do have a soft corner for SPICMACAY because in my early years in my college, that is when I was a volunteer with SPICMACAY. I studied in Miranda House. I did my geography there. And after that, I studied in Delhi School of Social Work to do my master's. And through those 5 years, and even in school, actually, I studied in a really nice school called Sardar Patel in Delhi. And both at home, because my father is a painter and mother a writer. So both at home and in school, art and culture was a big part of my growing up. So SPICMACAY was an addition, but I know that a lot of the other students who didn't naturally have an art environment, they got exposed to a whole lot of musicians and artists who would come and share their music and talk about their journeys. And, it was like a leg dem. So it's a fantastic program, completely run by volunteers. I think I wish more organizations would learn from this model of volunteering. I think all of us need to volunteer. When we volunteer and give ourselves, we learn more than we even contribute. So I have to admit that I haven't been following enough about what it's doing, but I'm sure, and I know that SPICMACAY has expanded a lot, and it has gone to various schools and colleges now with the onslaught of sort of every kind of music and every kind of art that is available to us. Some of our great, classical music, our folk music, our folk dance and classical dance, and all of that is sometimes getting left out. Like there was an earlier question that how come we are seeing more. Anish, switch off your, mute your thing, please. Because thank you. How we are seeing many more international films, but not enough from our country. I think the same is happening to our music and our folk art and all of that. So I think there is a real need for it. Otherwise, which is also connected to their livelihoods. A lot of great master crafts people or great artists and musicians, their children are not taking this up because they feel there aren't enough takers. And my father, in fact, is working on a center, arts center, where folk, traditional, modern, contemporary, all of it is going to be under one roof. It's a visual arts center, and I'm helping with him with that. And through that, I'm realizing that we've created so many silos. And we just don't know that folk and traditional art is actually such an inspiration even for modern and contemporary art, and that has got its respect. And these artists we don't even know who they are. So I think SPICMACAY, by bringing us these classical musicians and these folk musicians and dancers and artists, are doing a great service, not just to the young people, but when these young people grow up like me, I think we carry that treasure with us for the rest of our lives.
That's very kind of you, and we must thank you for sharing the fundraising link of Milap there. I'm aware that you did share on Twitter and supporting us anytime we've been trying to.
Well, this is my Guru Dakshina. It has given me enough, so it's my chance to pay back.
Well, on behalf of SPICMACAY, we are all very grateful that you support us in every way possible in spite of being so busy and joining us. There's just a few more interesting questions.
Aren't we done?
I think we have time for one more if I'm being a little greedy.
Don't forget, I also have a 9-year-old child who I have to engage and do my work, so I'm kind of juggling like all of you.
Definitely. No, if you have to go, then we can definitely end here. It's not a bad note to end on.
We'll take maybe, it's not a bad note to end on actually. Yes, I think if there's no pressing question, we could end it here. If there is a question that you feel really needs to be shared, then I'm happy to. But I think it's a good note. There are too many. You don't need to be partial. Otherwise the gun will be on your head. That why did you take that and not this? But hopefully we'll continue some of these questions. Unfortunately, the lockdown is going to be for a longish time. But stay safe. And if I can just give this one last thing, that when you go out, we all have to wear masks, but let's be creative and use our dupattas and scarves to wear masks and not hoard masks, because the health workers there's a big shortage of masks. So please spread this to others as well. And this is our time to be more compassionate, more creative, and do lots of self-reflection and come up with great ideas to make this world a better place.
So I think we are almost out of time. So I would like to formally
thank you, Anish, for doing this. And to your lovely parents who are also SPICMACAY champions. So thank you all of you. Thank you, Harsh, and everyone else. Please send out more information on good cinema that we all should watch. Let's keep that going.
I think I'll because you've mentioned so many movies in the course of this talk, if you give us maybe I'll take it from you after the call and definitely publish Facebook page of ours.
Sure, I will send it to you. I'll send it to you by email and you can maybe put it out there.
Top 10.
And if you can create a space for it where others can also share, names, and then so it just gives us, it'll be a nice curation of good films, and then we can look, search for it and find more material on it and watch it. Thank you.
So, Namaskar. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining.
Namaskar.
And we'll go on with our further Sunday meeting now.
Yes.
Very great. Very
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Anish. Take care, all of you. Bye.
So Didi, you can like maybe disconnect because we'll have
Okay.
to.
Okay.
Because we have to
I'll
go.
do that.
Otherwise, I would love
Sure.
to.
I'm just going to shut my computer and I'm assuming it's going to disconnect. Thanks.
Okay. Wait, I don't know. Okay. Hello everyone. Okay, I think a lot of people are still here. So is Nandita, sorry, is Simpy here?
Yes, Anish, I'm there.
Yes. So I think we can start. We can continue for an like we always schedule our 1 hour long meeting, the All India Volunteers meeting, and everyone who's watching on YouTube and Facebook now. Even though the load will slightly increase if you join the Hangouts meet, if you could continue to be with us either on those platforms or if you would like to join us on Meet, if you would like to talk to us because then it's more interactive, I suppose, we could do either one.